What's going on with Daniel Ricciardo? It's a question that came up time and again in the years after he left Red Bull Racing in 2018. With that team, he'd shown that he was one of Formula One's most exciting talents. He'd won 7 races. He moved to Renault and then McLaren in the hope of winning many more.
I took a little bit of a gamble on myself. Obviously the McLaren one, even with the win, the win was a high and I can't remove that. I can't ignore that.
It's McLaren and Ricciardo that win the Italian Grand Prix.
It was a challenge I took on and it didn't work out how I hoped.
Less than a year after that fabulous day at Monza, Daniel and McLaren decided to call it quits and part company. Now he's going back to where it all started, Red Bull, as a third driver. We won't see Daniel racing in 2023, but like the great driver that he is, he's already thinking further ahead.
In Abu Dhabi, sure, I felt a little more emotion, but I don't truly believe it's my last race. Today I can't tell you if it was or wasn't, and that's why I've chosen to take time off next year to really find that answer and not make an emotional decision or a quick decision, or because of course there were times over the last little bit where I was like, yeah, I think I'm done.
Welcome to F1 Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson. Like many great drivers before him, Daniel Ricciardo has decided the best way to continue his Formula One career is to take a step sideways and spend a year on the sidelines. When we sat down to record this interview, 5 days after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, I didn't know what kind of mood he'd be in or what he'd want to talk about. But above all, I wanted to find out what is going on with Daniel Ricciardo. I think by the end of this, you'll know the answer. He was in top form, funny, thoughtful, and honest. We talked about his struggles at McLaren, whether he ever considered quitting altogether, why overthinking things can cause problems, his choice of going back to Red Bull, and how a year away from Formula One's intense competition might do him a lot of good. We're going to miss Daniel's exhilarating overtaking in 2023, but as you listen to this, you get a feeling he's not done with Formula One. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Daniel, hello. The dust has settled on Abu Dhabi. How are you feeling?
It was a bit dusty, wasn't it? Out in the desert. I feel good. I feel content. I would say the two words I would use is content and relieved.
Right, explain both of those words. Why content, first of all?
Content, I think just to have got through it all, to have come through the other side, if you will. There was certainly testing times, this year even more than last. And I feel like I was still, of course, some Sundays would hurt, but I was still able to enjoy parts of the weekend and still kind of took a lot of good memories away, even in the second half of the season when everything had happened. So for that, I'm content with, I guess, the way I got through it, and relieved. I guess it goes hand in hand, but also kind of relieved, at the end of a season, even if whatever happened this year didn't happen, I feel like you get to the final race and you do have a sense of relief. And there's a bit of sadness as well, because every year's big and busy and it's got it carries its own moments and memories, but ultimately just kind of relieved to have made it through.
These seasons are long.
They are.
I think the whole paddock breathes a bit of a sigh of relief. But how about excited? Because let's start the chat talking about Red Bull, third driver. That news has just broken. Excited?
Excited too, yeah. There's certainly more than a couple words, but excited to, I think it all just, especially for what I've wanted, has made more and more sense, since the summer break's gone on and with time. And I think it's perfect for what I want. Moving into next year, there's something about returning back to the Red Bull family which feels really right, and that's made me kind of warm and cozy inside. So there's a lot of elements which kind of make it right, and then obviously gives me a chance to stay involved, but to still with enough distance that I can still tick some boxes that I want, next year, and to get that time that I said I want, and that time for myself and all of that. But when I am involved then in F1 and when I'm at, some events, race weekends, then I'm with Red Bull.
You talk about what you want. Is it time for yourself? Is it that more than anything else?
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll define it as time for myself or time away from the sport or the competition, if you will, because I guess, again, they probably both go hand in hand, but the competition is why I do it. That's why, even away from Formula One, as soon as, as a kid, I loved competing in any form of sport or little contest. But competition is also tiring. It plays with your emotions. It's relentless, especially the way the season is. And it's like, so I also just feel, as much as it's my biggest passion in life, competing, I also just need to take a break from that and the highs and the lows. And I feel like I just need to find a bit more balance in life, because let's say life outside of a race car this year has been really fun and enjoyable. And I pretty much love every day, but the racing can obviously affect that. And, that creates peaks and troughs, and those are they're relentless. And yes, it's what I signed up for, but I'm at a point now where I'm like, okay, if I want to be my best self, I need to create some distance.
Okay, what will a third driver who's done more than 200 Grand Prix and won 8 races, what is the job description? Are you getting 2011 vibes here when you were test and reserve for Toro Rosso? I mean, it's please tell me it's not the same job as that, or is it?
No, it's not. And look, obviously on both sides we were clear, and they I didn't need to say it. They said, they're like, look, mate, we appreciate where you are in your career. As you say, like how many races I've done, whatever. You're not going to be going back in time, standing at the back of the garage and just being a bit of a fly on the wall. Like, yes, I'll be involved. If I want to attend some debriefs, I will. I'll do some simulator. But I would say it's as much for now let's say, marketing role position as it is a, call it, driver position. So I think with the sport growing, of course, as it is, they also see, how I could be a good advocate for them as a brand, a team, and all that. So it'll be a mix of, let's say, driver duties in terms of the sim and that, but also, yeah, like I guess I'll not give myself credit, but where I could definitely contribute as well is, my experience. And obviously being through a few environments the last few years, kind of returning back to Red Bull as well, seeing how that team's growing and just trying to contribute and help where I can.
Look, returning back to Red Bull, how were the negotiations? Because I'm sure Helmut and Christian were quick to remind you that you left in 2018. During the negotiations, did they keep reminding you of that?
No, they didn't. And, that's where I think I was very, like I told them, I was very honest and appreciative. I just said, guys, thank you. Thank you for just having this conversation with me. I said, no matter where this conversation goes, I was just like, thank you for the time, because, yeah, you guys don't owe me anything. But I think as well, if you take it for what it was, yes, I left Red Bull at 2018. It was big news and it was like, whoa, can't believe Ricciardo's doing it, et cetera, et cetera. But as much as that was, let's say, a bit of a shock move, and of course, tough for me to as well, deliver the news, the relationship remained very good considering obviously the circumstance. And look, like everything, over time, you go through experience, you mature, you grow, and it wasn't even discussed in terms of there was no carryover of, but remember what happened, you owe us this, or it wasn't even talked about. It was just, this is where we are today, and we would like to bring you back in the family.
Is a race seat in the offing in 2024?
It's not, in terms of it's not there written. It's not okay, if you're doing really well on the sim, we're going to promote you to a race seat. So it's not. But of course, that's, I think with time I'll find my true answer. If the grid is what I want again in 24. I think right now, sitting here, I don't feel completely done. So I'm I think I'll want to get back on the grid, but time will tell. And it's ultimately, I'm not going to say, yeah, I can have every seat I want, but ultimately it's my decision if I want to be back, and that fire and everything I expect to feel when the lights go out and I'm watching on the sidelines, yeah, that's up to me to answer.
Have you at any point in the last 4 years thought, looked over your shoulder, seen that, Max has won 30 races since you left that team?
I didn't even know. I mean, I knew it was a lot.
half of them this year. But, I mean, have you looked over your shoulder at all and just gone, how different things could have been?
I don't look at it like that, because nothing is sure in terms of, if I stayed there the last 4 years, could I say I would have had more podiums than I've had? Because of what have I had? Maybe 3 or something? Yeah, like I'm confident to say, I would have had more podiums than I've had. But you just don't know if, obviously at the time I felt like it was right for me, and I felt like I needed a change and I needed to kind of just remove myself a bit. So if I continued, would that urge have grown? Would I have become, let's say, more curious or less happy or whatever? So it's not a sure thing that it would have been great if I stayed, because obviously I made the move at the time because I felt like it was right for me. So I don't look back and say, man, I shouldn't have. But of course I can, be honest with myself and say, yeah, look, I took a little bit of a gamble on myself. I still feel like the Renault one was pretty good in terms of especially 2020. Like it was one of the best seasons I drove in F1. And to get the team back on the podium, I was very proud of that. But obviously the McLaren one, even with the win, like the win was a high and I can't remove that. Like I can't ignore that. But yeah, I could, I can look and say, all right, yeah, I tried as well with this one. Yeah, it didn't quite work out. So you live and you learn, but I don't look back with regret. I just say, okay, it was a challenge I took on and it didn't work out how I hoped.
Can we go into more detail about what's happened at McLaren? Can you explain in layman's terms what you weren't getting from this year's car in particular that you need as a racing driver?
I think it was, even though the rules changed so much, it was ultimately I, struggled for, let's say, my level of ability, at least in my eyes. I struggled in both years. And ultimately it's something fundamental with the car and myself that I don't get. It's a thing of feel, it's feedback, it's like cueing.
What do you mean cueing?
Cueing? Oh, wait, maybe that's a sim term. Oh, okay.
Wait, what part of the corner?
I just used a word. I don't even know what it means. We talk about that in sim. Basically, the way you feel the car and is it doing what you expect? Is it rotating the way you expect? Or is something a bit off?
Is it corner entry?
It all starts there. You know what I mean? Because, if you struggle with a corner on the exit, normally it's a product of what's happened through the corner that's put you in a position of, let's say, difficulty on the exit. So most difficulties start on the entry, maybe not all, but most. But it's not even like, I mean, it is kind of an entry thing, but it's more just like a feel and a limitation. And then I think the problem is, I also look back at my very first race with McLaren. I outqualified Lando.
In Bahrain, I remember.
And that was when I was still fairly green with the car, if you know what I mean. So I kind of wonder, I'm like, did we just kind of get lost along the way? And it was kind of like, did I then start to try too hard, and did we try to engineer it too hard and get away from, let's say, my strengths and then try to drive the car a certain way, which, yeah, maybe was a weakness for me and something that I couldn't really grasp. So I don't know. It's an interesting one, but I think ultimately, like I then will just accept that, at least from my side, like I think on both ends we struggled, in terms of also the team trying to understand what it was and how to then update it or improve it. But from my side, I'm also like, okay, look, I'm not perfect. Sure, I've got some weaknesses. This car happens to expose a few of them. It's a place for me to work on. But let's say I still obviously didn't find a way to gel at one with this car often enough.
How different are the engineering approaches at McLaren and Red Bull in particular?
I think from an effort, it's the same. Or I mean, I feel like we would stay longer at the track at McLaren, and maybe because, yeah, we're trying to find a few more tenths than a Red Bull, especially the last year or two. But there's a lot of attention to detail, and we didn't not get it right because we were all just leaving early and being lazy. Like it was probably the opposite, where sometimes we probably put too much thought into it and too much effort. And then it was like, yeah, sometimes you got to get back to basics, but I think we acknowledged that through the season last year, over the summer break actually. And that's where my voice is kind of weird right now. I don't know why. There you go. It's a long season. Yes. I have not been partying for the record.
I was just going to ask what
I
you
really
did
haven't.
last night.
After Abu Dhabi as well, I went to bed. I didn't go out. But yeah, after the summer break last year, we kind of tried to just strip it back and be like, okay, maybe there's too much information. We're trying to we're overcomplicating it, where I'm driving consciously as opposed to subconsciously, and I'm thinking through the corner where I should just be doing. So we did acknowledge that, and I think we did make progress, especially second half of last year. Look, I guess ultimately, if I knew what we, let's say, didn't get right as a unit, then I guess we would have found a way. So yeah, I can't be critical of the way we tried to attack it, and we put in hours and hours and really did try to solve the puzzle. But I guess on both sides, we can ultimately now just put our hand up and say, look, we tried and didn't quite succeed.
And even with this car, the fact that you had COVID during the Bahrain test, did you feel that you were then playing catch up for those early races, and then it almost starts to spiral, doesn't it, even at that point?
It's funny because definitely in Bahrain, like first race, I felt affected by not doing the testing. But then the early part of the season, I was actually probably more competitive than I was, in the later parts of the year.
Great weekend in Melbourne.
Yeah, so Melbourne,
race, yeah.
I felt like I had good pace. Even Saudi, I remember quali was really close, and I actually remember I had like a small issue as well in qualifying where I felt like I probably could have found that extra 10th I needed. So I say it was there on the table, but we had a small issue. So let's say I was competitive in the first few, Bahrain, Imola as well. But so I wouldn't say, I would say it only affected me for Bahrain. Then I was pretty comfortable. But then we brought updates around, I think, Barcelona. And it was then where I then started to struggle a bit more. And I don't know if that was then coincidence, but then the gap started to increase again, where up until then I felt like I was always, within a 10th or 2 of Lando, and we were kind of going a bit more nip and tuck. And then that's where it started to separate again.
And the same issues as last year with the old regulations.
Yeah, there's still, like, the cars certainly behaved a bit different, but I would say like the DNA of the car is still the same, and where I would struggle, it was ultimately like the same thing. But like I could honestly just strip it all back and just say, yeah, it's just confidence, because I lack that extra bit of feel with the car to put it on the very limit and to know what I'm going to get. So there was very few laps this year, unfortunately, where I crossed the line in quali or something and I was like, that was a good lap.
But it's an extraordinary thing, isn't it? Because let's go back to your time with Max Verstappen. The average qualifying gap between the two of you was a 10th, I think. 1/10. So it's not, history proves that you can do this at the very highest level. So it's been one of the great puzzles of the last 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And I think as well, going back to Red Bull, I think there's an element of me which is curious in terms of just jumping on the sim and just seeing how I do, even just for myself, like to, let's say, a car that, of course, it's changed in the last 4 years, but a car that obviously I knew well, had a lot of success with. If it just kind of brings it all back and I'm like, oh yeah, this gels, this is me.
And
so
you'll be able to
there.
tell from the sim, will you?
I'll be able to get an idea. Like I think I'll know. Yeah, obviously if I'm there on lap times on the sim, I think that would give me the confidence that then I could obviously replicate it on track. But if I'm half a second off on the sim, then maybe I've got old.
Confidence is an intriguing thing with racing drivers. Ferrari used to give Michael Schumacher a day's testing at the start of every season because he just said, I just need to go around Fiorano and just prove to myself that I can still do this. You're all the same.
Yeah. It's funny. I had that for many years. I would say after a few years in F1, then it didn't happen anymore. But all through like my junior categories and the early years of F1, after a summer break or a winter break in Europe, because we wouldn't be in a race car for 3 months, I would always have that, a bit like you said with Schumacher, I would have a little bit of an apprehensive fear, if that makes sense, of, okay, can I still do it? Or I was kind of worried that, like, is the speed going to feel too fast? Like, am I going to have fear, or am I going to be scared? Or like, it's more something you put in your head because you just haven't done it for so long. It's like, but then, you do a few laps and you're like, okay, I still got this.
Are you quite intrigued to maybe try and jump in the 2021 Red Bull and just do some laps in that?
I think if I had the opportunity, yes. To fill the car, of course, but more just to stay a little bit sharp. And, I'm not a driver that's putting my hand up for testing all the time. Like, testing doesn't excite me that much, being transparent with you. But I know that it would do good for me. And especially if I'm not, racing in 2023, of course, even if I train every day, which I won't, but even if I do, you're not driving an F1 car, so your body you don't go through the G-forces, so even just to kind of keep my body a little bit in tune, I'd say yes to some testing opportunities.
The season of giving is upon us, but if there's anyone you should leave off your gift list, it's your internet service provider. If you haven't been using ExpressVPN every time you've logged on this year, then you might find you've already given them enough. That's because each time you access the internet without ExpressVPN, your ISP can log every single site you visit. And don't be fooled by using incognito mode, because they can see that activity too. Did you realize that they're also legally allowed to sell all of your browsing activity to third-party advertisers for massive profits? And that's why you should always go online with ExpressVPN. The app encrypts and reroutes 100% of your network data through their super secure servers, so your provider can't see a thing. ExpressVPN is committed to your privacy. Their privacy policy has even been audited by third parties, so you can rest assured that your data is not being logged by anyone. And if you're not particularly tech savvy like me, there's no need to worry. It's easy to use. All you have to do is fire up the app on any of your devices, including your phone and your laptop, tap one button to connect, and you're sorted. You've given enough to your ISP this year. It's time for you to start taking. So take back your internet privacy today with the VPN rated #1 by TechRadar and Mashable. Visit expressvpn.com/grid and get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/grid. expressvpn.com/grid to learn more.
Okay, Daniel, that's the checkered flag. Not the race we wanted, to be honest.
I know it's been pretty painful of late, but we'll keep at it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, don't worry, Daniel, we're still pushing. We're still on it. It'll come.
Daniel, how hard did things get this year? Did you think in the summer break of just doing a Juan Pablo Montoya and stopping mid-season as he did in 2006, or Niki Lauda in 1979 when he just, at the Montreal Grand Prix, pulled into the Brabham pits and said, Bernie, I've had enough?
That's pretty hectic. I commend them for that. but no, I didn't. And of course, I knew the reality that, it's not like my season was going to turn around, because I felt like it would have done so already. So I knew that there was probably some struggles ahead, but I also believed that there would be some good races ahead ultimately. So that was enough to keep me in it. And in a way, like, I felt like it would have been the easy way out, where it's not me, it's not my character. Like, I still wanted to show up and try to pull off some good results, and to kind of, I know it's like, it's for myself because I want to like dig deep and find like my true character, but I also appreciate that there's people who can draw some inspiration from that as well. So I feel like that's a consequence of what I choose to do. But so I did want to do it obviously for myself, but I knew also there could be a kind of positive, what do you say?
Singapore, right?
Ripple effect.
Yeah, but also you then get a result like Singapore and it all seems worthwhile, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing with this sport. Like it can create such short-term memory where you could struggle like hell for 15 races and then you have a big race and you're like, oh, that was worth it.
Can you explain to people listening to this just how all-consuming Formula One is for a racing driver and how the highs affect everything that you do and equally how the lows affect everything that you do?
I think when you put everything into it and anything, when you're so passionate about something, obviously you invest so much time and energy, and it's also like mental energy, like even when you're not doing it, you're thinking about it. And whether you're going to bed at night or you're waking up in the morning and it's there. So it's always, even if you don't like to admit it, it's always consuming you to some degree.
More so when it's not going well? Yeah,
because like winning's easy in terms of, I say that in terms of like everything around you it's all roses, like everyone's patting you on the back, everyone's on a high. Like from that point of view, it's easy. It's because your emotions are just, they're there, they're happy, you're smiling, you're successful, your confidence is beaming. So from that point of view, winning is easy, where there's not really many obstacles to deal with.
Did you think Max Verstappen has had, of all the 20 drivers, one of the easiest seasons?
I don't want to complicate it as it's easy to win, but the effect of winning is easy, or what winning does to you is easy in terms of, like, again, you win a race, you go back home, everyone's sweet, you go buy dinner for everyone and it's just like life's easy, life's normal, it's fun, it's whatever. But when you're going through the lows and that, it's like, and then that there starts to become not hesitations, questions being asked, and it's doubts, and even it's from people around you, whether it's the team, like it's like, so then that's kind of consuming. Okay, what are they thinking? Like I really need a good race to prove them that I can do it, and so it's just a lot more wearing. And that's even if you don't read media or whatever, but it's there's just a kind of a weight that's kind of in the air.
Do you read what's written and listen to what's said?
So I don't, but inevitably you get shown stuff, because even with a team, whatever team you're with, Thursday's media day. So they're going to give you the latest news. Okay, if you haven't seen, this article was written, so be prepared for questions on that. So even if I don't choose to read it, I'm going to see it at some point. And I might not see all 100 articles, but I'll see 10 of them. So you can't avoid that. So from Max, I don't think he's had an easy season in terms of to still show up every weekend. And it's what I would used to say also about Lewis, like his dominance. You can't mistake that it's easy. Like, yes, okay, he's definitely doing it easier than others. But then when there's the expectation of the world that, okay, you have to win this weekend. Like if Max doesn't win this year, it's like, oh yeah, that wasn't a good race for Max. So there's that as well, which week in, week out, if it was easy, we'd all be doing it. So let's just leave it at that.
and one of the few races that Max didn't win, Brazil, everyone jumped on it, didn't they, with the whole 6th place thing with Checo and goodness knows. But
yeah, and that's the thing, like in a way, you can't win because it's like everyone just sets the bar so high. But I'm not going to sit here and moan about that because I know that comes with the territory. And when you put yourself out there on the world scale and try to ultimately be better than every other single individual around the world, then you've got to expect some of that. So obviously I wish it wasn't there, but we're not naive.
Do you know, hey, Daniel, just talking to you now, I can see that the analysis is still going on in your head. I feel that there's a hunger still. I didn't know. So we're talking 5 days after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and I was quite intrigued to see what kind of Daniel I'd find. As you said, you were relieved and content, but I still feel that there's a little fire in there. How determined are you to come back in 24?
There is certainly still a fire, and that's why I haven't chose to completely walk away, because I want to see what happens to this fire. If it stays relatively dormant, is that the right word? Or if it comes and comes back in a big way.
Serious case of FOMO when everyone's lining up on the grid in Bahrain.
Yeah, and I think that's why in Abu Dhabi, sure, I felt a little more emotion, but I'd be lying if I said, yeah, I felt like Seb on that weekend, because I don't truly believe it's my last race. But of course there was an element where I'm like, maybe it is. So let's try and enjoy it and soak everything in. So today I can't tell you if it was or wasn't. And that's why I've obviously chosen to take time off next year to really find that answer and not make an emotional decision or a quick decision, or because of course there were times, you know, over the last little bit where I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. But that's just speaking out of emotion. So I won't know till the clock keeps ticking, and then I'll see.
I guess it depends what offers come through the door, doesn't it? You know,
yeah, I mean,
Guenther Steiner said he was very keen for you to join Haas, and you thought otherwise. Yeah, if Toto Wolff comes knocking, or Christian Horner comes knocking, or I don't know. Do you remember those? There was that time when you were being linked to Ferrari as well. I can't remember what year that was.
Yeah,
you know,
there was a couple times where that was linked, but I think going back to a seat next year, you know, as Guenther said, he reached out and stuff. The more, as I said, since the summer break, the more days that passed, and especially like I did the triple header to get back into the second half of the season. So 3 races on the bounce, and it became more and more clear that it wasn't about what phone call I was receiving. It was about me acknowledging that I just ultimately don't want to be competing next year. So in a way, I am glad that, let's say, a top team didn't reach out, because it's one of those ones where you probably feel like, oh, I got to sign it. But yeah, I think deep down, like I was just craving a bit of distance.
burnout. Can we call it that?
Yeah, you could call it some burnout. And I'm not afraid to admit that or say that. And it's one of those ones that, you know, everyone will have an opinion and this and that, but it's ultimately like, I know what I feel, I know what I want. So yeah, it was some of that. And I feel I don't want to say I'm the only driver that feels this way, but I wouldn't say I'm the normal, even just say like sportsman, where I kind of use like practice makes perfect. Like the more I do sometimes, the more I'm just like getting kind of lost in it, where I kind of feel like the power of a break for me, some time off, I could come back better, which sounds kind of counterintuitive to some, but I know for me, that could actually be really good.
Well, and I think back to some of certainly your qualifying performances, where sometimes they came out of the blue.
Max Verstappen is in pole today. No, he misses out, and he's been denied by his teammate Daniel Ricciardo.
And he finished P1. Nice job, mate. Good luck.
I gotta relax a little. I'm tripping major nutsack right now.
Mexico.
In 2018.
Yeah.
That, you just banged that one in right at the end. It was like, whoa, where did,
That one was really sweet.
Yeah. But isn't it? So it's like practice makes perfect. No, that came out of...
Yeah, and so going back to that, so I'm not going to talk about the actual pole itself in terms of, it was the lap of my life or anything, but I was at a level where I knew the car so well. I had so much confidence and understanding in the car that, because I think the first run in Q3, I was maybe 0.3 off Max, who was on provisional pole. And it wasn't even, man, I need to find 3 or 4 tenths to try and have a chance at pole. It wasn't that thought. It was like, oh yeah, I know where that time is. Like, I know I can find it. I know what this car can do. I just haven't put that lap together. So that lap itself was literally just me kind of connecting the dots and just putting it together. It wasn't like driving out of my skin. It wasn't this miracle lap. It was just, I know I can brake 3 meters later in that corner. I know I can pick up the throttle a little bit earlier. And that's just what I did. So I just executed what I knew was possible.
Do you believe in form? Because that strikes me as a man who's completely at the top of his form.
I guess, but I think form is just another word for, well, I don't know. I'm not going to try and make up another word for it. But but yeah, I mean, I look back and ultimately, like what I've tried to just describe was just, I was at one with the car. I knew what I would get. And I think then you comfort comes from that and those feelings. And then ultimately, form can come. But yeah, form's more like a result.
Okay, I don't like the word form either, but when you're performing at a really high level, everything seems so logical.
Yeah, and in a way like a bit effortless.
Yeah.
So that I can definitely agree with. And yeah, just when you're on, it's like you don't miss.
Well,
and
I
it's
just
like
do that and then that'll happen.
Yeah.
What are we worried about? You know?
Yeah. And okay, so what are you doing? Even the way you just described it, it was effortless. It was completely subconscious. You did not even think about that. And I think that's also what form is. And that's kind of stripping it back to where sometimes you just overanalyze. And it's like, mate, just go back to basics. Just drive it. Just, you know how to drive it fast. Just do it.
Did
and
you
I think
ever
that's
get
also
close to Mexico 2018 at McLaren? Just in terms of
more
the
so
feeling?
more so last year.
Yeah.
There was definitely a few times last year where I felt like, oh yeah, like the car's doing what I want, and I feel pretty good with it. Yeah, there was a few times, but I think the problem was as well is, you know, maybe I would have one good weekend, and then I was like, oh sweet, like it all makes sense now. We've got this. And you go to the next weekend, and all of a sudden you're lost again, or just it's not doing what it did last week, and then now you're trying to like adapt a new style or set up the car differently, and it was just, that was where there was no real consistency. It just, unfortunately, like when we took one step forward, it didn't mean that the following weekend we were going to take another one. It was, which is again something I still can't fully explain.
Talking of the big teams coming knocking, I know people listening will want to know, how close did you get to hooking up with Mercedes
for next year?
Well, was there a time in the past as well?
Oh, no, I was like, no, I mean, going back to the past, like obviously 2018, you know, I spoke to a few teams, and yeah, Mercedes was one, but I don't think that's a surprise or a secret. It was, again, I'm not saying that, yeah, there was a contract on the table, and it was more just, yeah, it was just to try and figure out what their plans were as well. But
would you have liked to have been up against Lewis in the same car?
Yeah, like I always had a bit of a
I've done
desire.
Vettel, I've done Max, I'll do Lewis now, right?
Yeah, like it was, because I mean, as a competitor, and going back to the reason why I do this is I want to see if I'm the best. And obviously Lewis was so successful for so many years, so I was just the thought of going against him. And it wasn't even like, yeah, like I know I can beat him, so put me against him. It was just, I'm curious. I want to know. I also wanted to know what makes him so good. So like, obviously when you work in a team together, you see more than you do if you don't work in the same environment. So even from that point of view, but yeah, to test myself, it would have been fun. But then for next year, for like, let's say reserve talks and that, I did speak to Mercedes as well. So yeah, it was really Mercedes and Red Bull were the two that I was, you know, most serious about.
How close did it get with Mercedes? Or did Lewis's comments in Monza where he said, no, Daniel's too good to be a number 3 driver?
I don't know, actually. I don't know if
did
that
he
changed
scupper it for
anything.
you? Yes.
But no, it was, look, there was some conversations for sure. It wasn't to a point where, yeah, again, like, here's a contract. It's up to you if you want to sign it. It didn't get that far. But then, yeah, like once I had the initial chats with Red Bull, it became more clear to me that I probably didn't know it a few months ago. But then when we really started to, let's say, engage a little further, that's when I was like, oh, it was kind of like a light bulb where I was like, there's only, like, this is the only place for me. Like, it's perfect.
What's been the reaction of Max and Checo to you coming back?
It's been nice, actually. It's been nice. I had a little word to both of them in Abu Dhabi. I think when they started to, yeah, obviously, whether they heard internally from the team or they caught a bit of wind that it was starting to get close. I think they were excited, and I'm removing any, I mean, not that it's, I don't even have to say like removing any ego or anything, but I'm just honestly grateful to be back in that environment, to have an opportunity just to work with them again and to try and help. Really, I mean, people would be like, but they don't need help because they're dominating at the moment. But yeah, I mean, they're a target now. You know, they've got the big target on their back. So if I can help them, then I'll feel like I've made a contribution.
Do you sense that 10% reduction in wind tunnel time is going to hurt? What's the mood in the camp at Red Bull? Like,
it's you can't deny that it doesn't hurt, because, you know, when you talk in F1, every bit counts. You know, it's like everyone's chasing that last, not even an inch, it's that last whatever micro inch. So yeah, 10% is a serious number. but they're obviously in a good position where they've got a very good car. So you'd think they've obviously learnt enough from this car to then still have a competitive car next year. But that 10% is, even if they're winning next year, they would say, well, we could be 10% better or whatever. So it's not nothing. It's definitely not nothing. But I know there's a lot of people in the team that were there back in my day, and knowing what they're like, that'll just motivate them even more. So that's...
They are, all of the top, or every team is, but particularly the top teams, ferocious competitors, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's, I love that.
I mean, just look at the way Christian dealt with the cost cap, breaching the cost cap, and, he came out
on the attack.
Attack. That is his form of defence, his attack, isn't it?
Yeah, and... even as a fan of the sport, watching Mercedes and Red Bull go at it last year and Max and Lewis and that, it's awesome. It just highlights how much it means to everyone that puts the effort in. And it's that's what you want. You want this just intense, heavy competition. So as you say, it's the heavyweights, and that's what everyone wants to see. It's like with boxing, everyone wants to watch the heavyweights go at it.
What a Belgian Grand Prix this has been. Mercedes locked out the front row. Daniel Ricciardo, though, is going to take the checkered flag. It's Red Bull's 50th win in Formula One. It's Ricciardo's third win in 6 races. He wins the Belgian Grand Prix.
DR, how do you think the 2014 spec Daniel Ricciardo would have dealt with this season in particular? Because I think back to that season, and I can't think of any drivers on the grid that did a better job than you that year. That was peak Ricciardo.
Yeah, I can agree with. I mean, again, it's all talk because I'm not a world champion and I didn't win the world title in 14. But I remember I had so much confidence that I was just if I had the car to win this year, I would have won. That was just where I was at, and it wasn't even a thing kind of thing. And that's where I wouldn't say that was even form. It was just confidence, and it was just you obviously I stepped up to the big team, and now I'm playing in the big league. But I just loved it. I just thrived off that, and. I guess you go one way or another. You either get overwhelmed by that environment and you get the pressure's too much, you feel intimidated, or you're, whatever with being on a big stage, or you just soak it all in and just be like, this is easy. I live for this stuff. And that's really how I felt.
Because I'm sort of meandering my way towards a comment that you made about Lando a couple of months ago, where you said ignorance is bliss. You're at that stage of your career where you just...
I probably don't do him justice, the poor kid. I probably do.
You know what I mean? You just get in and you do it and you're feeling confident. And have you seen a little bit of yourself, 2014 spec, in Lando Norris?
Yeah, definitely some elements of it. And, I think that's ultimately just a young driver coming in and doing well. When you're young, it's you feel somewhat invincible in terms of that's maybe too dramatic, but you can just do it. In terms of when I say you can just do it, I'm trying to refer to a night out. It's at this age now, it's oof, that hurts. Where when you're young, you just go and you go and you go, and that's the racing.
You don't think about tomorrow.
Yeah. It's kind of like that.
Whereas now you're thinking, hang on, what have I got to do tomorrow?
Yeah, and how am I going to feel? And so it's I'm not putting myself in the position where I'm old, but it's more when you're young, it's just carefree. You got less responsibilities, it's whatever, and you're just in and it's working and you're just going through it and you're like, oh yeah, sweet, I'll do it again and I'll do it again. And so yeah, I see where he's thrived off that and in that environment. And I think as well, it's a bit like with me and Vettel, I don't think anyone was really expecting me to beat Vettel. And I think when I came into McLaren... He just
won the last 9 races of 2013.
Yeah, so no one was expecting me. No one was expecting me to beat Vettel, let's be clear, sorry. No one. I don't even know if my dad expected me to beat him, but anyway. Again, just to be clear, I'm not putting myself saying I'm Vettel and I was a 4-time champ, but I think coming into McLaren... I would assume that there was more people saying I would beat Lando than not. So, then when you're kind of the underdog and then when you start beating your opponent, then it's like everything's just even easier, so to speak, in terms of like you just don't have much to think about.
So you've been alongside Vettel, you've been alongside Max Verstappen.
Maximus.
Do you put Norris in the same bracket as those guys?
It's tough until he's in a, let's say, a top team, in terms of until he's regularly running up the front. It's tough to make a direct comparison because, and this, I'm obviously not trying to like discredit him, but until you really win and then to see how you handle that, that's where like I go back to Lewis and it's like, yeah, he was winning and whatever. And yeah, the car was great, but he still did it and he still handled all the pressure and all that. And he still did it and performed and did what everyone thought he could do. So that's where it's hard to draw a complete comparison. But from a driving ability and stuff, yeah, the kid's very good.
Where are his
I don't know if I could say like, is he a Max Verstappen? That's a little hard for now. But yeah, I'm not going to say he's not good because the kid's good.
Do you feel that McLaren is his team now? Do you feel it's been built around him?
I mean, in a short answer, yes. But that's not, I don't want to say, yeah, they just kind of put everything into him and not me. But yeah, like he's grown up in that team. It's familiar to him now, and he's obviously proved, his pace and his speed and that. So yeah, I think everyone at McLaren is excited for what Lando can do, for sure.
And if you have any advice for Oscar Piastri coming in as a rookie, what would it be?
I think just go out and drive. Like, I know that sounds like a really lazy response, but it's just go out and drive. Like, yeah, learn, be a sponge, but drive. Don't set the bar too high for yourself. If you end up doing better than maybe what you thought, like awesome, but just take it race by race. And as long as you're learning and you feel you're improving every race, then I think that's all you can kind of ask for yourself.
And do you think Andreas Seidel and Tom Stallard, your chief race engineer, are they the right kind of guys to be nurturing a young guy like that?
I think so. I think also with, even if we didn't quite get it right from my side, with McLaren, I think they still would have learned a bunch from our 2 years, and maybe things where we deviated or went a little wrong or sideways, whatever. So I think all that knowledge can be passed on to Oscar, and I think they will, yeah, I would like to think they would kind of have a little bit of a head start from that point of view.
What is Daniel Ricciardo going to do next year when he's not doing these Red Bull marketing activities and on the sim with Red Bull? What's the plan?
It's going to party like there's no tomorrow. It's going to be a full-time disco goer.
Is it bucket list territory? Are you just going to be...
I want to, because it's, I don't want to be one of these people that are like, yeah, when I get the time, I'll do it. Again, because who knows, maybe I'm back into this whole cycle in 2024, and maybe then I could be back in F1 another 5 years. Who knows? That takes me to 40. So I'm aware that there is definitely some things that I don't want to make an excuse for not doing next year. There is some things that I just want to say yes to and tick some boxes because...
You know that film, Yes Man, Jim Carrey? Is that going to be you?
Maybe.
For the next 12 months.
You know what? This is bad because I'm such a Jim Carrey fan, but I can't remember the movie. I can picture the cover of it, but I can't remember.
Everything.
Yeah, okay. I mean, probably not everything because there's a few things I probably don't want to say yes to, but yeah, I'm trying to hold myself accountable for not making an excuse of like, okay, if I've got the time and it's something I've always wanted to do, then tick that box. And because I think it will also give me what I want to get out of next year is that little bit of like self-reflection and doing some fun little trips or whatever it is I'm sure would just give me that. And I want to do like some national parks and just, yeah, a lot of stuff in, I guess, to do with nature.
To help you with that self-reflection.
Yeah, just to
almost disappear
remove
into
yourself.
the wild.
Yeah. And even like I would love to do, I mean, these things all sound kind of simple or silly, but like a phone detox, and just kind of, because we're so reliant on that and we're constantly like getting information all the time, and that's also consuming. So like I would love to just get away for a little bit and literally just kind of shut off and just go back to like basics. And
On the farm in Australia, or
I'd love to spend time on the farm. I want to. So one thing I want to do is I want to ride across America on a like a mini motorbike.
what Route 66 are we talking about?
Basically from New York to LA.
Yeah, that's pretty much the
yeah.
mother road, as
Yeah, but we
John
want to like
Steinbeck called it.
make it an exciting journey and not kind of go the line of least resistance.
But hang on a mini motorbike, like
Yeah.
in fact, when you were last on the pod, you talked about the 110.
Yeah,
right?
the 110. There you go. Exactly.
You're going
on
to
a
go
110.
from New York to LA on one.
Yeah, that's
You're
the
gonna be
plan.
flat out the whole way.
We might have to, as you said, like bore them out a bit.
But would you
make a
do
bit
Route
more
66,
power.
or would you take carve your own? You seem to have
we
carved
need-
your own path in life. So
Yeah, the path is still yet to be decided, but it's something like I always, I remember I was like, I've said it for so many years. When I was young, I was like, okay, when I eventually stop racing and get a bit of time, I want a road trip, around America. And then that's kind of turned into, because I think a theme as well next year, as much as I want to do a lot of exciting things, I also want to take the chance of having, call it a year off, to slow down. And I think also what like a 110 going across America would symbolize is like slowing down and just taking everything in. And, we're always thinking about getting somewhere as quick as we can, getting the job done, getting out. And it's like, no, I want to soak everything in and just be, as I said, like just go back to basics and appreciate like all the little things. And of course, just also the unknown. Like, of course, we'll plan out like the trip and the legs and that, but okay, what's that town like? Or what are we going to come across along the way? Like, it's just the whole unknown is going to be so exciting. And so, these are like little, I'd say that's quite a big box, but something I definitely want to tick. And I'm sure I will, even it's like, I know this sounds deep, but even it's like, there'll be nights where I'm probably just staring at the stars, and I could get emotional. I could reflect on my career. Or I could be thinking about, who knows? But I feel like that will be very good and quite powerful.
2,500 miles on a 110.
That's living. Wait, no, it must be more than that.
I think Route
Is it?
66 is about that.
Well, mate, I'm talking New York to LA. Come on. It's going to be a while.
Do you think you're going to miss the adrenaline, of Spa, of Saudi, Monaco?
Yes. But I think that's also where I will try to find it in other avenues, because of course, like I am, every freaking F1 driver is an adrenaline junkie. That's a fact. So I will naturally still put myself in situations where I'm getting a rush. Okay, will it always match F1? Maybe not, because you also, not only you have the speed, but you have the competition on top of that. So, I could be doing something crazy or something fast, but there's most likely not going to be the element of competition. So, but I think I'll definitely still do things that scratch that itch. I don't know exactly what everything will be yet, but that's kind of nice as well. Like where I sit here now, the thought of also not knowing some things that I'll do next year or things I'll come across, and like that's also exciting. So
Can I throw some ideas at you?
hit me.
Go on. Super Bowl.
Yes. Yeah, Super Bowl's on the list. The mighty Buffalo Bills. Like, I think I'll go there probably regardless, but if they make
Wait,
it...
are you a
I'm
Rihanna fan? She's already booked for
1000% there.
half time, isn't she?
I remember the first song that I heard was SOS. I'm not someone that like is listening to her on my headphones all the time, but is she awesome, and is she a boss lady, whatever they say? Yeah. So no, like, yes. And to be honest, the Super Bowl halftime show is like, it's normally so good. Like the spectacle is so amazing that it's like the artist is the icing on the cake, but it's just the whole show is already like phenomenal, and she'll kill it. Yeah.
All right. What about UFC?
Yes.
Because you did a bit of training. Was it Charles Oliveira? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Well done, mate.
How did you go with that? Anyone who hasn't seen the UFC, take a look.
I know what you're
Have you
about to
got the
say.
nasty streak to do that? I mean,
No, wait, let's be clear. I'm a super fan and I love training, but I'd be lying if I said, in my DNA I'm a fighter. Like, I would love to throw elbows and also receive elbows. Like, No, as much as you want to think you're a tough guy, like I think you either have that or you don't. But it's also, I think, speaking of adrenaline rushes, I think that would be amazing. I know there's these like charity boxing events and stuff. So even for that, like to actually do a little bit of a fight camp and then to step in the ring with someone, obviously at a similar level to me, aka very low level.
Former
that would be
teammate
quite
Danny
fun.
Kvyat, maybe.
Actually, I've seen him spar a little bit. He's definitely better than me at the moment. So I would have to up my game. But that would be because I've always, being such a fan, I've always wanted to like feel like, what's it like walking out? What's it like walking into the ring and like all that? So
Yeah, but it's
that
the
could
bit
be
that comes
something.
next, right?
Yeah, but like, I don't know. There is a weird curiosity of like, what does it feel like? Like, is the adrenaline so high you don't feel the punches to the face? I don't know.
As a
But
UFC
anyway,
fan,
my mum's probably going to be like, no, Daniel, don't do this.
I've just got you back from Formula One. Look, as a UFC fan, are you a boxing fan as well?
Yeah,
I always think is that sort of rallying in Formula One? It seems that the two don't seem to mix.
No, I mean they're under the umbrella of like combat sports, so I think there's definitely an appreciation and a love for all of them. I do prefer mixed martial arts more. So what let's say what the UFC is. I just love the variety of it and where it can go, and the matchups as well. So the clashing of styles is much bigger.
Talking of matchups, right? Who on the grid do you reckon you could take down?
Oh.
Or who would you struggle
That's why
with?
I was
Let's put it that way. Who would you struggle with?
I was quite sad when Max pushed Ocon and he got
Do you remember in Brazil?
fine or whatever. I'm like, come on, he just pushed him. I'm like, if he threw an overhand right at him, I get it. But a little push,
Like
come on,
Nelson
that's fine.
Piquet did it in Hockenheim in 1982, or James Hunt did it, I think, in Montreal.
Yeah.
There is a history of it, but
no, I'm not obviously condoning that.
do you know what? I saw the photograph of the 20 drivers in Abu Dhabi all going out to dinner. Everyone said, the camaraderie was amazing. And Alex Albon said to me, I've never laughed so much in my life. And I was like, well, when I first started coming to Formula One races in the mid-90s, there was genuine animosity between the drivers. I was like, I can't compute what I've just heard Alex describe with what I knew of Formula One in the mid-90s, or what I was told. And Damon Hill seconded that, actually. He just said in his day, when he left Formula One, I said, any chance of the whole grid going out to dinner to celebrate? And he said, not a chance. Most people didn't even notice I'd gone type thing. But is it genuine, that camaraderie between you guys now?
Yeah, like so speaking of the dinner, it was, I would say it was really refreshing. Yes, so many of us got on, so we all laughed, that's a fact. As a competitor, of course, you always have maybe like a little bit of a guard up. And then when we all kind of got around together and you could just feel like there was just some honesty and whatever shared, it was like, okay, like the guard slowly got lowered and we were just like, you know what, I mean, who are we kidding? Like we all have the same passion in life. So like for sure we're going to get along, or we have things in common or the same interests. And so even like when we did a dinner in 2016, that was the last time we did a big driver one. And I don't remember it being like it was last week. So I don't know if it's maybe
the banter wasn't as good.
Yeah, like the camaraderie was like last week was special, like that wasn't, in a way it wasn't normal. So I was trying to figure it out. Is it because now with social media and whatever, like we kind of know more about each other, so therefore we can understand each other a bit better, or I don't know what it is, but I think for me it's just maturity, where I'm old enough now that I know I don't need to dislike someone to want to race hard on track with them. Where like I know in back in the day, like I would be more aggressive to drivers who I didn't like, and I would kind of make a point of it. But now it's like, yeah, I will race everyone the same because I want to bring that intensity out of myself, like unconditionally, of who it is. And that's, for me, it's just more of a maturity where it's like, yeah, we can shake hands, whatever, but I mean, it's even like with Seb, he was catching me the last 10 laps of the race in Abu Dhabi, his last ever race, but I was more motivated to beat him than ever. So it's like, and my relationship with Seb is better than ever. It's really, it's amazing at the moment, but it didn't change my will to beat him on track. And that's just kind of I would just put it down to a bit of maturity.
I know there's an element of what goes on tour stays on tour. So I'm not going to ask for any secrets from that dinner.
Yeah.
But there was rumours going around.
Oh, no.
No, only about the cost. I heard 140k mentioned. Of course.
Oh,
I mean,
I saw a receipt.
It was even
a
mentioned
picture of
in
a
commentary.
receipt, but it was not even. We were at a different restaurant,
Right.
So I saw a receipt from I don't know. I think it was Salt Bay or whatever, Nuzeret, and that's not where we ate. So that was a fake one. So when I saw one, I was like, okay, there could be so many fakes out there.
But I did find myself looking on the internet to see what is the most expensive meal you can get. And there is a taco that you can get in Cabo on the west coast of Mexico that costs 25 grand. It's laced with gold. Kobe beef. Yes.
Is eating gold good for you? Like, can we address
benign.
that?
It's
like, I know you need your iron and you need a few minerals,
Do you need
but
gold?
I don't know if you need gold.
I think it passes through you. So what a waste, right? But anyway, the point is there is 25k, but it clearly wasn't anything like as expensive as that. But are you allowed to say what you ate?
Yeah, so I don't know what the bill was because one of the drivers kindly took it. So I would not know what it was, but I would say we definitely didn't like splurge. Like it was a normal dinner. Of course, it's going to be expensive when there's 20 people attending a dinner, but it was normal food. You know what I mean?
The maitre d', I've got 20 Formula One drivers here. Gentlemen, let me give you our special Formula One menu.
I know.
Right?
I was like, yeah. So it was
it was never going to be cheap.
But it was very. I mean, yeah, the food was just food, if you will. There was no show. There was no like demonstration.
And was the food almost secondary to the banter?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the food was, we needed to eat something, so whatever they bring out, sweet. But it was more just like the storytelling, and it was just nice. Like it was a long table, but you know, a few of us kind of moved around and tried to like, you know, mingle and enter the chat. And yeah, we were all just like happy to spend the time together. It was weird. I mean, I say weird, only weird because, as I said, we'd never really had that. But I will say, like, really the catalyst was Seb, you know, because it was his last one and all of us respect him, and we knew that it was going to be a big weekend for him and for sure emotional. So, you know, I don't want to say it definitely wasn't fake how we were, but I think there was an extra level of like us being, let's make this special for Seb, you know, like let's make sure we have a good night, let our hair down, because yeah, it's a nice send off for him.
Do you know why you have to come back in 24, 25, whenever it is because you need a proper send off. From the drivers, from the paddock.
I actually thought about that because
I'm
I
actually
saw,
being serious.
Thank you. I mean, I'll take it as a compliment.
It's meant as a compliment. I found myself, as brilliant as the whole farewell to Seb was, Mick Schumacher was leaving, Nicholas Latifi was leaving, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I felt a little bit sorry for some of the other guys, really.
It's funny because although I may seem, I mean, I am like an attention seeker. I feel like I always have been. That's why I got in trouble a lot at school. But I'm not. Of course, I would appreciate it, and that, like, if I was to come back and get like a bit of a send off, like Seb, like, of course, it would be very nice. But it's not something that I feel like I need. Or again, if I never race again, I'm totally okay with my last weekend in terms of like not having a big hurrah. So yeah, like I appreciate it. And for sure, like it was a nice thing, and what we did for Seb and everyone did was beautiful. But I don't like demand that attention or recognition. So yeah, I don't feel like if it is the end for me, I don't feel like, oh, that's something, I missed out. Like I'm cool with it. Yeah, I don't really get too caught up on that stuff.
Well,
but let me go on record and say it was beautiful for Seb, and I'm glad
really
he was celebrated like that for sure.
No, it was a good vibe. Well, Daniel, it's been wonderful to chat. Thank you very much for your time. And
speaking of time, flies when you're having fun.
What does it say?
6. Yeah, so just over an hour.
Perfect. Well, it's time.
Enchanté. I feel like I want to ask you questions.
Can I just say? What is it with enchanté? I hear you say it. Is that 2 years at Renault taught you one word, right?
Yeah. So it was. This
Well,
is
actually,
really
your clothing.
funny.
Am I right? Your clothing brand is there a line called enchanté?
Yeah, enchanté.
Right.
And actually,
Where did that come
my
from?
niece and nephew made me this little enchanté bracelet the Monday after the race at the kids club at the hotel. So it was really just started as a bit of a piss take. So actually, Natalie Pinkham's husband, Owen, it was him and I that I've known him now for 10 years or so, and we love UFC. Like, we spend a lot of like social time together. When the time is right, we enjoy a drink and whatever, and it just became something kind of silly where we would just would cheers and be like, enchanté, and introduce ourselves, and then you have a few drinks and you start acting like a kid and introduce ourselves and be like, enchanté. And it was just something silly, but it made us always giggle. It made us just feel like the idiots we are. So then it was like, okay, French team. And then I've been living in Monaco for however many years now, nearly 10 years, I think. And it's like, I don't really know many French words, but when I say enchanté, people are like, "Ooh, you speak French?" I'm like, absolutely not. But I know, I sound like I could, right?
Yeah, well, no, and now you have a clothing range.
We built something out of it, and it's fun. It's fun.
Are you going to invest a bit of time in the businesses? Whether it's what have we got?
Yeah.
We got the wine business. We got the clothing.
Yeah. There's
What else is there?
There's definitely a few things, but as an example, the wine, the clothing, like these are things that I really enjoy investing time into, and it's also, again, it's very easy from the outside for people to be like, oh, you've just got to focus on F1 and the driving and this and that. But yes, 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, like when you're coming up and trying to just figure it all out, 100% put all your energy into that. But at some point, you need a bit of a release. Like at some point, if you've just got Formula One, that's not for me. Like I need something else, and actually learning about business or building something, like not only am I proud about it, but it's like, it's exciting. So it's also for me personally, a very positive distraction. Like that's how I would say it. So these things are fun, and it next year gives me a chance to put a bit more energy into them.
Well, look, have a great time in 2023. Final thought, when are we going to see you at a race? Do you know yet when we can look forward to seeing you?
I mean, I would likely say Melbourne would probably be my first one. I got to check the calendar. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Melbourne would be, that makes sense. And any excuse to get back to Oz. So yeah, if not sooner, probably Melbourne, mate.
All right, look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much for your time. Happy Christmas.
Thanks, mate. You too. I can eat as much as I want now. This is great.
Enchanté, Daniel. I love talking to DR, and I hope you agree that he was really interesting to listen to. He has a perspective on Formula One that few drivers have, and that will really help Red Bull in 2023. I found his thoughts on McLaren, on Lando Norris, and his relationship with the other drivers all fascinating. He would make a good TV pundit, wouldn't he? But I don't think that's on his radar, at least not in the near future. Daniel, many thanks for your time, and enjoy whatever you get up to next year, especially that trip across the USA on those 110 motorbikes. Now, I hope you all enjoyed listening to Daniel, and please give me your thoughts and stories on him. Send them to me at Tom Clarkson F1 on Twitter, or use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid, and I'll read out some of them at the end of next week's show. Which brings me on to what you sent in about Guenther Steiner after last week. Everyone loves Guenther. Have a listen to this from Shiv Bagnari. I've just listened to the episode with Guenther, and I have to say I was impressed. There's a lot of what people assume happens behind the scenes that leads them to conclusions, but this episode really gave me a whole new insight into management and into Formula One. Awesome episode. Well, thanks, Shiv. And what about this from Ben Johnston? Haas have usually started the season with a bang, then failed to keep up with development. Now they have a new title sponsor, they're able to reach the budget cap, and they have two experienced drivers to help them develop the car. So Haas could be a dark horse for the top 6 next year. Watch that space, Ben. Let's hear next from Barry Smith. Every time I hear Guenther talk, I hear hints of Nicky Lauda. He's so direct. Well, I hear that too, Barry. And finally this from the Fleeing Dutchman. Great episode. Formula One needs teams like Haas. Without the mid and back of the grid, there would be no Formula One. Well, thanks for that, and I'm sure Haas are hoping to be more mid than back of the field next year. It's certainly exciting times ahead for the Haas F1 team. Thanks to everyone who wrote in. We love your feedback and read everything that you send in. And please remember to give us your thoughts and stories about Daniel ahead of next week's show. And if you'd like to hear more from Daniel, please check out his other Beyond the Grid appearances from 2019 and 2021. We've also got an interview with Lando Norris, where he talks about his relationship with Daniel as McLaren teammates. The links to those episodes are in the show description. Let me know what you think of this episode by leaving us a review on your podcast app and share it with a friend on social media. It's great to see new Formula One fans discovering the show every week. Now, I'll be back on Wednesday, December the 7th with another big Formula One interview. I'll give you a clue as to who it is. We're recording the episode in Monaco. Okay, that doesn't really narrow it down, but it'll be worth the wait. Thanks so much for listening. F1 Beyond the Grid is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios. Until next time, keep it flat out.